Hello and welcome to our study guide for Chapter 7. This will help you for the quiz that we are taking on Monday. Alright, so I posted this study guide without answers, so now we are going to go over the problems and you'll have the answers that you can write on a copy of that, or do whatever you would like. But if you do this, I guarantee you it'll help you a lot on the quiz. Alright, so our first example, simplify 2 to the negative fifth. You should be able to notice that this has a negative exponent. So what we do is first figure out what 2 to the positive fifth power, which would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which, if you multiply that out, gives you 32. But since it has a negative exponent, we send it down. Warp zone. No. Remember, negative exponents do not make negative numbers, they make fractions. So answer number 1 is 1 over 32. Number 2, write in scientific notation. Alright, well, we look at where the decimal is and know that we have to get it between the first two non-zero digits. So we figure out how many decimal shifts is it going to take to get from here to there. And it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we put the decimal between the first two non-zero digits, 2.5. Then, of course, it's times 10. Because we had 4 decimal shifts, it's going to be exponent of 4. But you see this is a really small number. We moved backwards, so it's going to be negative 4. And there's that answer. Alright, so now we're getting to some of the good ones. This looks like a lot of variables. Like I said, take each thing separate. I'm going to start with let's start with the x's. Alright, so if we don't have any exponent on the x, I'm going to put a 1. And that looks like the only thing that doesn't have an x. So we have a 1 here, and a negative 3. So a 1 for an exponent on the x, negative 3 is an exponent on the x. Okay, so when we are dividing with exponents, we keep the base and subtract the exponent. So the problem I'm going to be doing is 1 minus negative 3. Okay, remember that when we subtract a negative, this again is for the x's. Subtract a negative, it turns into a plus, so we have 1 plus 3. Therefore, the final answer here for the x is going to be 1 plus 3, which is x to the fourth. Also keep in mind, if you're looking at the x's, we have x to the first power, x to the negative third. Which one's bigger, 1 or negative 3? Since 1 is bigger, we knew our final answer is going to end up in the numerator, and it did, because it has a positive x to the fourth. Alright, now the y's, we'll look at this. Y to the second over y to the 0. We can do this one quick. 2 minus 0 is just 2. So we get y to the second power. Okay, now the z's. We have z to the negative fifth. There's nothing in the denominator, so it's just going to act like a warp zone because of this negative exponent. And we send it down. When we send it down, it loses the negative. So we've taken care of the x, y, the z. Now we just have to take care of the numbers. Alright, well, I see 4 over 2 to the negative third. Well, that 2 to the negative third, that has negative exponent, so we're going to send that up. And 2 to the negative third would just be, in your numerator, 2 times 2 times 2. So we have 4 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8 times 4 would just give us, finally, 32, x to the fourth, y to the second, over z to the fifth. Okay, there was a lot going on there. If you didn't understand it, rewind, but we have our answer to number 3. Alright, I'm going to try to scoot down here on our study guide. Next one is simplify with a bunch of multiplication. So the rule is when we're multiplying, we keep the base, add the exponents. Alright, I see that there are some things with no exponents, like this x doesn't have an exponent. So I'm going to add the exponents of 1. Just put the imaginary 1 in. Okay, so next thing, I see 2, I see 8, and I see negative 4. We're multiplying, so let's multiply across. 2 times 8 is 16, times negative 4 is negative 64. Next, we have to deal with the x. And we're going to keep the base, add the exponent. So 2 plus 1, remember the imaginary 1 we added, is 3, plus negative 3, that gives you x to the 0 power, which we'll deal with that at the end. And now let's look at the y's. We already have a y to the 0 power. In case you forgot, any number to the 0 power or is just going to give you 1 unless it's a 0, which we won't worry about that. So times 1 wouldn't change anything. So essentially what we can do is just erase this because it does not affect anything. Sorry about that, my erase tool got a little funky. So negative 64 is our final answer because we had two variables to the 0 power. And of course, that just equals 1. So negative 64 times 1 times 1 would just still give you negative 64. Alright, moving on to number 5. We have 1 over negative 5x, or we 1 over x to the negative 5th power. So just like we did in number 1, where negative exponents are like a warp zone, this one's already in the denominator. Sorry about that, it's a lot of jumping around. When it's in the denominator, it's going to act like a warp zone and go up. So, give myself some space here. If we send x to the negative 5th up, it's with the 1. That doesn't mean anything, but when it goes up, it loses its exponent. So our final answer is just x to the positive 5th power. Okay, next problem. We have all this stuff to the negative 2 power. When you have something that has a exponent outside parentheses, that means we're going to multiply it by all the exponents inside, even if it's a fraction. So let me add in some imaginary 1s, well, just one of them right there. And then I'm going to distribute here and here and here. Okay, so negative 2 times 1 gives us 4 to the negative 2. Remember, we're multiplying by the exponents, not by the coefficients. X is 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 over negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. All right. We've done everything right, but we are not done because we have a whole bunch of negative exponents. First thing we can do is take care of the x's, because when you have two x's and we're dividing, we keep the base, subtract the exponents. So be careful here. Negative 8 minus negative 4. It's going to turn this 4 to plus. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4. So we're going to have x to the negative 4 power and 4 to the negative 2 power. Both of those are going to get sent down. So it's going to be 1 over 4 squared is 16. X to the negative 4 comes down, and it's x to the positive 4. So our final answer is 1 over 16, x to the 4th power. And now for our last problem. Morales thinks negative 4 is the solution to the inequality. Y is greater than 3x minus 2. Michaela does not think it is a solution. Who is right and why? We are just going to have to figure this out. All right, so let's start with our inequality. And again, this is a little bit of a review from the last chapter, but I don't want you to forget that stuff. And we are going to plug in. Remember, this is an x and this is a y. So we'll plug it in the right spots. So plug in for the x, we have negative 2. And plug in for the y, we have negative 4. Now we can just multiply and simplify. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 minus 2. Bring the rest stuff down. Negative 6 minus 2 is negative 8. So our final answer is negative 4 greater than or equal to negative 6. The answer is yes, it is greater. So Morales thought that it is a solution. She is correct. So good job, Morales. And finally, do some quick shout outs. So our first shout out is a shout out to Plugman with a little drawing. Looks just like him. So, hey Plugman. And of course, our last shout out says happy birthday, Cassie. So happy birthday. Now, with this study guide, do what you think is best to prepare for our quiz Monday. It'll look just like this, 7 questions. Probably exactly like this, except just slightly different numbers. So if you can master and do all these problems, you will get 7 questions right. Remember, my quizzes are based out of 5, so 7 out of 5, 140%. That'll be help anyone's grade. So have a good weekend. I will see you Monday.